Shalom in Yeshua's name. I am Dr. Jenkins Sahayam. I welcome you to my Bible teaching series. This topic is entitled The Messiah. Since this topic requires a vast understanding of the scripture to join the various puzzle in the right place, I have split this topic into various parts so as to have a comprehensive understanding of this topic. As my teaching are sequential, if this is the first topic of mine you are listening to, I highly recommend you to listen to my earlier teaching, namely the name of God and the nature of God, before you listen to this teaching. Shalom in Yeshua's name. I am Dr. Jenkins Sahayam. You are now watching part 7 of the Messiah series entitled Yahweh's Appointed Timeline. Before getting into this topic, let us have a quick recap of what we have covered so far. God created man in his own image. God gave man dominion over all things. Death was never man's destiny, as long as he is obedient to God's warning of not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But Satan tricked Adam and Eve to eat out of that forbidden tree. Thus, the dominion of man is forfeited to Satan, who is the ruler of sin. God, however, because of his grace and mercy, clothes the nakedness of sin through a garment of skin which indicated a blood sacrifice. From then on, God accepted only blood sacrifice. God, however, promised that through the offspring of a woman, that is a human being, the dominion will be restored back to man in the future. The mark of God points to the grace and mercy of God through a sacrifice that is provided to the righteous and wicked alike. God's plan to restore man's dominion by the seed of the woman was, however, tested as a result of mating between angels and human women, which resulted in a hybrid race called the Nephilim, who were giants. But God responded by destroying the whole earth through a global flood, but saved Noah and his family along with a specific pairs of living creatures by protecting them in an ark. Though the Nephilim race were destroyed, some of their genetic evil survived, probably through the wives of Noah's sons. Mankind had only one language prior to their rebellion at the Tower of Babel, where they intended to build a tower reaching to the sky so as to escape a future flood in case of their rebellion. And man's rebellion against God thus continued, that made God to confuse their language and assign them to other angelic beings and create borders. Yahweh, however, chose a people who are yet to be a nation who would in future understand this divine language and inherit the land he sovereignly chose for himself. Yahweh accordingly chose Abraham, a descendant of Noah's son Shem, to make a covenant with him to carry out his promise of restoring man's dominion through the seed of the woman. Yahweh revealed to Abraham his statutes, judgments, commandments, and law, which is a requirement for the successful restoration of man's dominion by being holy, thus sinless, and thereby escape from being held captive to death by Satan as a result of sin, which is transgression of God's law. Yahweh then blessed Abraham and promised him to make him into a great nation through the promised seed, whereby all the nations of the earth would be blessed. Though Abraham had other children, Yahweh chose to establish his covenant through his descendants Isaac and Jacob. Isaac being the promised son of Abraham's legal wife Sarah, and Jacob, though being the second son, got the birthright from his elder brother Esau, who has sold his birthright in fear of his death due to hunger, and thereby not having the faith in God's covenantal promise that is to be inherited by him as a firstborn. This is in complete contrast with Abraham, whom Yahweh asked to offer the covenantal promised son Isaac as a burnt offering, through whom he had earlier promised to bring the promised seed. Abraham's faith act was rewarded by God because he believed even if the promised son was sacrificed, Yahweh would somehow fulfill his covenant which he promised to accomplish through Isaac by resurrecting him. Yahweh gave Abraham the circumcision as the sign of the covenant. Yahweh appeared to Abraham as a man. Jacob wrestled with the man and recognized him later as God. The man blessed Jacob, saying that he will be henceforth called Israel. Yahweh now chose Jacob's descendants, that is, Israel, as a nation to establish his covenant from which the promised seed is to come. Yahweh gives Israel his law, which they are to follow in order to be a holy and priestly nation for the whole world. Yahweh outlines the requirement needed for him to dwell among his people, which the people were to make. This is called a sanctuary. Aaron was consecrated to be a prototype Messiah as a priest whose purpose is to mediate between God and man and also bear the sins of the people symbolically. Yahweh fulfills the initial promise to Abraham of giving to his descendants the promised land of Canaan, which he sovereignly chose. Yahweh declares Israel to be his firstborn. Yahweh gave them the command to kill a Passover lamb and apply its blood to the doorposts of the Israelite house, which would serve as a sign to protect the firstborn of the family from the angel of death. Yahweh said he has given blood upon the altar to make atonement for the souls. Yahweh said he is a merciful and gracious God, abounding in goodness and truth, bearing iniquity, transgression, and sin, but by no means clearing the guilty. Yahweh stood in front of a rock and asked Moses to strike the rock, which yielded water. Yahweh asked the people bitten by the fiery serpents to look at a brazen serpent upon a stake in faith, which he commanded Moses to make in order to be healed. All people who left Egypt towards Canaan, who witnessed all the supernatural miracles of God, yet didn't believe him but transgressed his commands, Yahweh swore not to bring them into the promised land. This included, unfortunately, even Moses and Aaron. Only Joshua and Caleb made into the promised land among the original generation, along with a newer generation of people who were born in the wilderness. Yahweh equates his covenant people worshipping other gods to harlotry. Yahweh reveals himself as a jealous God. Yahweh stresses the importance of sacrifice. Yahweh warns his people about his curses upon anyone who does not obey the words of his law, because they are the very terms and conditions of the covenant. According to Yahweh's law, a wife who is guilty of adultery is to drink from the cup containing the bitter water of curses. A divorced wife after remarriage can never be remarried back to her former husband. Seventh year is a time of sovereign rest for the land and freeing of Hebrew slaves without extracting a payment for freedom. The year of Jubilee is the time of restoration of the property which had to be handed over to its original owner. A slave can be redeemed of himself or his property by a kinsman redeemer who is to be a relative or his kinsman. Yahweh also warned about false prophets, but in spite of all these things, Israel failed to keep its covenant in the promised land. Israel demanded a king for them, which grieved God to an extent that he said that Israel has rejected him to be its king. Now, there are two types of Messiah or the anointed which we have covered, namely the priestly anointed Messiah and the kingly anointed Messiah. Both systems became corrupt enough to earn the curse of God as per his law. Accordingly, the kingdom of Israel was divided against itself and later was invaded by other kingdoms, and the temple that housed the very presence of God was destroyed as per the curses warned by Yahweh. And Yahweh divorces the kingdom of Israel on account of its harlotry by worshipping other gods. Yahweh warns them of its consequences by bringing out his wrath of jealousy. But according to Yahweh's law, a divorced wife cannot be remarried back to her former husband after being defiled by another. Yet we see the promise and the prophecy that Israel would be blessed and be remarried back by Yahweh. The mystery remains: how could Yahweh remarry his divorced wife against his own law or Torah, yet upholding his own righteousness, which in fact is based on the Torah or the law which he gave to understand his plans and purpose by which he acts? So, all these things posed severe problems. Why? Because in order to redeem mankind as per the law of Yahweh, it requires another man to be a kinsman redeemer. To address the basic problem, we need a human being who is to be free from sins, which is precise observation of the Torah law throughout his life. Because if at any point he would have transgressed those laws, he becomes a sinner and thus debted to Satan, who received the dominion on account of this. Therefore, no sinner can qualify himself to redeem his fellow human being. Even if we were to find someone, he should be willing to sacrifice himself wholly, thereby giving up his blessings of inheritance and desires as a payment to redeem his fellow human being. He should not only sacrifice his blessing for the sake of redemption, but also take upon himself the punishment meant for the people who transgress the law of God. Most importantly, his redemption should be able to meet the requirement of not just one human being, but the entire mankind, which in our case is to deliver the souls of all people held captive by Satan as everyone has transgressed at some point. The scripture makes it clear that God found no man worthy to meet this requirement. So God makes a promise and gives numerous hints in the scripture that He alone would be the Redeemer, for which it requires Him to become man in order to redeem His fellow human being and restore the dominion back to man. It is in this context He made His first promise in Genesis 3:16 that the seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent, which is symbolic of himself becoming a man born of a woman in order to redeem his fellow human being from the dominion of Satan by carefully fulfilling the law and bearing the punishment of the people for their violation against his law. Let's now see what are the appointed times that Yahweh has revealed in His scripture to fulfill His plan and purpose of redemption of mankind. In order to understand this, we need to be aware of the biblical calendar which Yahweh has revealed in the scripture. Genesis 1, verses from 14. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give the light on the earth." And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. There are two important things to note here. One is that God created the sun, moon, and the stars for a purpose, as verse 14 points out that it is for signs and seasons. Now, the word seasons is from the Hebrew word muadim, which also means appointed times. And the other thing to note is that, as verse 19 points out, there was evening and the morning on the fourth day. So, a biblical day is calculated from sundown, which is evening, as we see in the creation account of each day in Genesis chapter 1. Let us now find out how many days constitute a week as per the Bible. Leviticus 23, we read, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yahweh in all your dwellings. So the word Sabbath is taken from the Hebrew word Shabbat, which means to rest. It is in the same context of what we saw in Genesis regarding how God took rest on the seventh day. So a biblical week consists of 7 days, with the seventh day being the day of rest. Now let's find out, when does a biblical month starts. The Hebrew word for month is the word chodesh, which also means a new moon. Therefore, a biblical month is synonymous with the sighting of a new moon. To understand when a biblical new year starts, let's now read the following verses to understand them. In Exodus chapter 12, verses 2, we read Yahweh commanding Moses, saying that this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. The context of these verses were at a time of Exodus, which was preceded by God's judgment on the Egyptians by various plagues, among which that which is significant to us here is described in Exodus 9. The flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear, which is the Hebrew word abib, and the flax was boiled. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. So at this point of the verse, we get a clue that in this season of significance, the barley was in the ear, which is otherwise called Abib. Significantly, the first month of the year is also called Abib because of this. We see this again in Deuteronomy chapter 16. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover to the Lord your God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. So, the first month of the year is based on the sighting of the new moon at a season when the barley is in the Abib, ready to be harvested. Abib also signifies the spring season. With this understanding of the biblical calendar, let's now find out Yahweh's appointed times. Leviticus chapter 23. Yahweh said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites, tell them, here are my appointed feast days. They are the appointed feast days of Yahweh. Tell the people that they must come together for these sacred assemblies." Here, the Hebrew word for appointed times is again moed, which we earlier saw in Genesis, the same word translated as seasons. And the word assemblies here is taken from the Hebrew word mikra, which also means rehearsals. This offers us a clue that Yahweh wants his people to know about his appointed times, and his people are to perform what he tells them as a rehearsal for what is going to come in the future. Because these are Yahweh's appointed feast days and not man's. These are the appointed times of Yahweh. There are three appointed times that comes in the first month of the biblical calendar in the spring season, namely Passover or Pesach, the feast of the unleavened bread, and the feast of first fruits. On the third day, 50 days from the feast of first fruits, is the feast of Pentecost, which in Hebrew is Shavuot. And the final appointed times are in the seventh month of the Hebrew calendar or the biblical calendar, which comes in the fall season, namely the feast of trumpets or Yom Teruah, the Day of Atonement or Yom Kippur, and finally the Feast of Tabernacles or Sukkot. Now let's find out what these feasts symbolizes and what message they convey. The first appointed time is Passover, which occurs in the first month of the biblical calendar on the 14th day. Exodus chapter 12. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of the month every man shall take a lamb according to their father's houses, a lamb for a household. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. Now you shall keep it until the 14th day on the same month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it at twilight, and they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintels of the houses where they eat it. For I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh. Now the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So this day shall be to you a memorial, and you shall keep it as a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. You shall keep it as a feast by an everlasting ordinance. So the message that is conveyed through the feast is that Yahweh instructs his people to select a lamb and kill it at twilight on the 14th day of the first month of the biblical calendar. The blood of this slaughtered lamb is then to be applied to the doorpost and lintel of the house the Israelites were living, so that this blood would be a sign to protect the firstborn of that household that bears it when Yahweh executes judgment against man, beast, and the gods of Egypt. So, the central theme of this feast day is that the blood of the chosen lamb served as a sign to protect the firstborn of that house. We also read in Exodus chapter 4, verses 22 and 23, Yahweh asking Moses to tell Pharaoh the following words. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, indeed I will kill your son, your firstborn. So, on the one hand, Israel is to choose its lamb and put its blood on the doorpost and lintel of their household in order to protect their firstborn. On the other hand, Israel as a nation is Yahweh's firstborn. So Yahweh conveys the message that he would protect his firstborn, which is Israel, through a lamb, the blood of which would serve as a sign to protect them from the coming judgment that Yahweh would execute in the future. The second appointed time is the feast of the unleavened bread. In Exodus 12, we read, then they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. They shall eat it. Do not eat it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but roasted in fire, its head with its legs and its entrails. You shall let none of it remain until morning, and what remains of it until morning you shall burn with fire. And thus you shall eat it with a belt on your waist, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. So you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread. Until the 21st day of the month at evening, for 7 days, no leaven shall be found in your houses. Since whoever eats what is leavened, the same person shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he is a stranger or a native of the land. You shall eat nothing leavened in all your dwellings. You shall eat unleavened bread. So the slaughtered lamb on the twilight of 14th day of the first month is to be eaten on the 15th day along with unleavened breads and bitter herbs. To remind you once more, a biblical day always begins at sundown or evening. So the first feast of Passover is the preparation day where the lamb is slaughtered at twilight, which is between noon and sundown of that day. So this slaughtered lamb is then prepared along with unleavened bread and bitter herbs and is then eaten after sundown, which marks the beginning of the new day as per the biblical calendar. So, this would be the 15th day of that month. The central theme of this feast day is that no leaven should be found in the respective houses, nor it is to be eaten along with bread. This applies both to the stranger as well as the native, failing which they are to be cut off from being Yahweh's people. Now let's find out what Yahweh refers to as bread from his point of view. Exodus 16:4. Then Yahweh said to Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not. Verses 13. And in the morning the dew lay all around the camp, and when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance as fine as frost on the ground. So when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, What is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. So, in Yahweh's point of view, it is not the bread which people are accustomed to, but rather something which is His divine providence for the sustenance of the people. Again, in Deuteronomy 8, we read, Every commandment which I command you today, you must be careful to observe, that you may live and multiply and go in and possess the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers. And you shall remember that Yahweh, your God, led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep the commandments or not. So he humbled you, allowed you to hunger, and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds from the mouth of Yahweh. So, the central theme of this feast is that removing the leaven and looking up to God for his divine providence. The next feast is the Feast of First Fruits. In Leviticus chapter 23, we read, And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you come into the land which I give to you, and reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh to be accepted on your behalf. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it, and you shall offer on that day, when you wave the sheaf, a male lamb of the first year without blemish as a burnt offering to Yahweh. So remember this feast, that it is to be celebrated on the day after the Sabbath. So this would be the first day of the week that follows the week in which the Passover and the unleavened bread feast were celebrated. Now let's find out what Yahweh refers as his first fruits. Hosea chapter 9 verses 10. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first fruits on the fig tree in its first season. Also in Jeremiah chapter 2 verses 3 we read, Israel was holiness unto Yahweh, and the first fruit of his increase. Not to forget about the law of sowing and reaping, which we already covered in the section entitled Torah or the law. In Leviticus chapter 19, we read the following. When you come into the land and have planted all kinds of trees for food, then you shall count their fruit as uncircumcised. 3 years it shall be as uncircumcised to you. it shall not be eaten. But in the fourth year, all its fruit shall be holy, a praise to Yahweh. And in the fifth year, you may eat its fruit, that it may yield to you its increase. I am Yahweh your God. Bear these things in mind till we cover its significance in the next episode. The next feast is Pentecost, or Shavuot in Hebrew, which means weeks. In Leviticus chapter 23, verses 15, we read the following: And you shall count for yourself from the day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. Count 50 days to the day after the seventh Sabbath, then you shall offer a new grain offering to Yahweh. So this day is calculated from the feast of the first fruit, which is called the counting of Omer, from which 7 Sabbaths are to be counted, and the 50th day, which is the day after the seventh Sabbath, is to be celebrated as the feast of Pentecost. Again, an important thing to note here is that the day after the Sabbath here means that this feast also is celebrated on the first day of the week. In this feast, however, it is permissible to eat leavened bread. Now let's find out what is the significance of this feast. In Exodus 19, we read, In the third month, after the children of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on the same day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. For they had departed from Rephidim, had come to the wilderness of Sinai, and camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain. Just to give you a background of this verse, we already saw that Israel left Egypt on the eve of Passover, which is the 15th day of the first month. So, after the feast of the first fruit, down 50 days, you come to the third month, which is what this verse is referring to. Now they are camped in the wilderness of Sinai mountain. And in verse 10, we read, Then Yahweh said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and let them be ready for the third day. For on the third day, Yahweh will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. So, the significant thing that happened on this particular day of Yahweh's appointed feast is that Yahweh told the Israelites that he would come among their midst upon the mountain in full view of the people. And that's exactly the day that Yahweh gave his Torah, or the instructions, which is popularly known as the Ten Commandments. Exodus 19:16. Then it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunderings and lightnings, and a thick cloud on the mountain, and the sound of the trumpet was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. So this day signifies the covenant that Yahweh made with his people at Sinai, bearing all its terms and conditions, which is what is called the Torah, or the law, or the commandments. We already saw in the section entitled the law or Torah that Yahweh considered this covenant to his own marriage covenant with Israel. And all the Israelites agreed to its terms and conditions when Yahweh commanded his people to keep his commandments, to obey his voice and uphold the covenant. And the people answered with one voice, All the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do, and we will be obedient. But as we covered earlier, Israel failed in its covenant by transgressing the terms of the covenant, which is the Torah or the law. This prompted Yahweh to give a certificate of divorce to the house of Israel. But Yahweh also promised that he would make a new covenant with them once again. Jeremiah chapter 31. Behold, the days are coming, says Yahweh, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, says Yahweh. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. No more shall every man teach his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Yahweh. For they all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, says Yahweh. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. Thus says Yahweh, who gives the sun for a light by day, the ordinance of the moon and the stars for a light by night, who disturbs the sea and its waves roar. Yahweh of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, says Yahweh, then the seed of Israel shall also cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus says Yahweh, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, says Yahweh. Behold, the days are coming, says Yahweh, that the city shall be built for Yahweh from the tower of Hananel to the corner gate. The surveyor's line shall again extend straight forward over the hill Gareb. Then it shall turn toward Goath, and the whole valley of the dead bodies and of the ashes and all the fields as far as the brook Kidron to the corner of the horse gate towards the east shall be holy to Yahweh. It shall not be plucked up or thrown down any more forever. Yahweh also tells how he is going to empower the people to follow his terms and conditions, which is the law or the Torah. In Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 27, we read, I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes. You will keep my judgments and do them. So, the central theme of the Feast of Pentecost is that Yahweh giving his law and also promising his spirit on that appointed day in order to empower his believers to obey his law. The next feast is the Feast of Trumpets. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 23. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath rest, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it, and you shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh. So the 7th month is the fall season according to the Hebrew calendar. And the first day of the month signifies that it is a new moon day. Now let's read what are the significance of a trumpet. In Numbers 10, we read, Yahweh further spoke to Moses, saying, Make yourself 2 trumpets of silver, of hammered work you shall make them, and you shall use them for summoning the congregation and for having the camps set out. When both are blown, all the congregation shall gather themselves to you at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Yet if only one is blown, then the leaders, the heads of the divisions of Israel, shall assemble before you. But when you blow an alarm, the camps that are pitched on the east side shall set out. When you blow an alarm the second time, the camps that are pitched on the south side shall set out. An alarm is to be blown for them to set out. When convening the assembly, however, you should blow without sounding an alarm. So the blowing of trumpet is to summon the leaders or the people as a whole, or to sound an alarm depending upon how it is sounded. The trumpet also signifies the coronation of a king, as we read in 1 Kings 1:39, 2 Samuel 15:10, and 2 Kings 9:13, etc. In Isaiah 27:13, we read, "It will come about also in that day that a great trumpet will be blown, and those who are perishing in the land of Assyria and who are scattered in the land of Egypt will come and worship Yahweh in the holy mountain at Jerusalem." Other prophecies regarding the significance of the trumpet is found in Joel chapter 2 as well. "Blow the trumpets in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh is coming, for it is at hand." Isaiah 18:3. "All you inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, as soon as a standard is raised on the mountains, you will see it, and as soon as the trumpet is blown, you will hear it." So the significance of this feast is that it is a rehearsal looking forward to the return of Yahweh. The next feast is the Day of Atonement or Yom Kippur. Leviticus chapter 23. "And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Also the 10th day of this 7th month shall be the Day of Atonement. It shall be a holy convocation for you. You shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh, and you shall do no work on the same day. For it is the Day of Atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahweh your God. For any person who is not afflicted in soul on that same day shall be cut off from his people, and any person who does not any work on that same day, that person I will destroy from among his people. You shall do no manner of work, it shall be a statute forever throughout your generation in all your dwellings. It shall be to you a Sabbath of solemn rest, and you shall afflict your souls on the 9th day of the month at evening. From evening to evening you shall celebrate your Sabbath." So, the central theme of this feast is that of the national atonement of Yahweh's people. This is reflected in Zechariah chapter 3 as well. "Hear, O Joshua the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you. For they are a wondrous sign. For behold, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. For behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, upon the stone are 7 eyes. Behold, I will engrave its inscriptions, says Yahweh of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day." So again, it speaks of the national atonement. Deuteronomy 32, chapter 43. "Rejoice, O Gentiles, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants and render vengeance to his adversaries. He will provide atonement for his land and his people." And in Leviticus 16, we find the outline of the atonement ritual. Leviticus chapter 16. "Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall take the 2 goats and present them before Yahweh at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, one lot for Yahweh and the other lot for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which Yahweh's lot fell and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before Yahweh to make atonement upon it and to let it go as the scapegoat into the wilderness. And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall kill the bull as the sin offering, which is for himself. Then he shall take a censer full of burning coals of fire from the altar before Yahweh, with his hands full of sweet incense, beaten fine, and bring it inside the veil. And he shall put the incense on the fire before Yahweh, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat that is on the testimony, lest he die. He shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his fingers on the mercy seat on the east side, and before the mercy seat he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, bring its blood inside the veil, do the blood as he did with the blood of the bull, and sprinkle it on the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. So he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel and because of their transgressions for all their sins, and so he shall do for the tabernacle of meeting, which remains among them in the midst of their uncleanness. That shall be no man in the tabernacle of meeting when he goes in to make atonement in the holy place until he comes out, that he may make atonement for himself, for his household, for the assembly of Israel, and he shall go out to the altar that is before Yahweh and make atonement for it, and shall take some of the blood of the bull and some of the blood of the goat and put it on the horns of the altar all around. Then he shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with its finger 7 times, cleanse it, and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. And when he has made an end of atoning for the holy place, the tabernacle of meeting, and the altar, he shall bring the live goat. Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, confess over it all the iniquities of the children of Israel and all their transgressions concerning all their sins, putting them on the head of the goat, and shall send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a suitable man. The goat shall bear on itself all their iniquities to an uninhabited land, and he shall release the goat in the wilderness. This shall be a statute forever for you. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, whether a native of your own country or a stranger who dwells among you. For on that day the priest shall make atonement for you, to cleanse you, that you may be clean from all your sins before Yahweh. It is Sabbath of solemn rest for you, and you shall afflict your souls. It is a statute forever, and the priest who is anointed and consecrated to minister as priest in his father's place shall make atonement and put on linen clothes, the holy garment. Then he shall make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make atonement for the tabernacle of meeting and for the altar. And he shall make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the assembly. This shall be an everlasting statute for you, to make atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did as Yahweh commanded Moses. So the Day of Atonement is the only day where the high priest is permitted to enter into the Holy of the Holies in the temple to make atonement not only for himself and the people, but also for the holy place and the altar, on account of their standing in the midst of the uncleanness of the people pertaining to the holy gifts. Thus, the central theme of the Day of Atonement is the sanctification of the land and the people before a holy God. In Leviticus chapter 25, we read the following about the year of Jubilee. You are also to count off 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years, so that you have the time of the 7 Sabbaths of years, namely 49 years. You shall then sound a ram's horn abroad on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement, you shall sound a horn all through your land. You shall thus consecrate the 50th year and proclaim a release through the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. And each of you shall return to his own property, and each of you shall return to his family. You shall have the 50th year as a jubilee. You shall not sow nor reap its aftergrowth, nor gather it from its untrimmed vines, for it is a jubilee, it shall be holy to you. You shall eat its crop out of the field. So, the Day of Atonement is the time of proclamation of the upcoming Jubilee year, which is the 50th year, which is a sabbatical year that also proclaims the release of every bonded servants and return for everyone to his own property. The next feast is the Feast of Tabernacles. In Leviticus chapter 23, verses from 33, we read the following. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days to Yahweh. On the first day there shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it. For 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh. On the 8th day you shall have a holy convocation, and you shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh. It is a sacred assembly, and you shall not do any customary work on it. Also, on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep the feast of Yahweh for 7 days. On the first day there shall be a Sabbath rest, and on the 8th day a Sabbath rest. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of beautiful trees, branches of palm trees, the boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before Yahweh your God for 7 days. You shall keep it as a feast for Yahweh for 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generation may know that I made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. So, the central theme in this feast is that Yahweh asked the people to dwell in booths or huts to remind them of their humble beginnings from which the Lord has blessed them. In Nehemiah chapter 8, we read the following. And they found written in the law which Yahweh had commanded by Moses that the children of Israel should dwell in booths during the feast of the 7th month, and that they should announce and proclaim in all their cities and in Jerusalem, saying, Go out to the mountains and bring olive branches, branches of oil trees, myrtle branches, palm branches, and branches of leafy trees, to make booths as it is written. Then the people went out and brought them and made themselves booths, each one on the roof of his house, or in their courtyards, or on the courts of the house of God, and in the open square of the water gate, and in the open square of the gate of Ephraim. So, this is a period of time when the people of the southern kingdom of Judah were returning to Jerusalem back after their Babylonian captivity, and they were about to celebrate the first Feast of Tabernacle in the land of Israel upon their arrival after their captivity, when Nehemiah read out of the book of the law of Moses as to how they were to build their booths. So here we find that the Israelites brought in many branches of various trees in order to build their booths or huts. But what is significant of this feast in Yahweh's point of view is that Yahweh also promised them that he himself would tabernacle among his people. Exodus chapter 25. And let them make a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show you. That is, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, just so you shall make it. Again in Leviticus 26. I will set my tabernacle among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you shall be my people. Again in Ezekiel 37, we find the following: My tabernacle also shall be with them. Indeed, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. The nations also will know that I, Yahweh, sanctify Israel when my sanctuary is in their midst forever. So, once again, we can relate the promise of Yahweh with his own appointed times which he has revealed. So, to put all these feast days in a nutshell, the first one is the Sabbath, which is the seventh day, that is Friday at sundown to Saturday sundown. The theme is that God rested and he expects man to rest as well. The second feast is the feast of Passover, that is on the 14th day of the first month of the biblical calendar. The central theme of this feast is that the Passover lamb's blood protected the firstborn of the Israelite or Yahweh's people. The next feast is the Feast of the Unleavened Bread that starts on the 15th day of the first month. The significant theme is that removal of anything leaven and waiting for God's own providence for sustenance. The next appointed time is the Feast of the First Fruits. The central theme here is the presenting of the first fruits of the harvest to God. So this happens on the day after the Sabbath of the unleavened bread. So this always occur on the first day of the week. The next appointed time is Pentecost, which is the 50th day after the Sabbath following the unleavened bread. The significant incident is that the Torah or the law was given to Moses at Sinai on this particular day, and God also promises to put his spirit upon his people to empower them to carefully obey his law or the Torah. The next appointed time is the Day of Trumpet, which is on the first day of the seventh month. The central theme is the blowing of trumpet, which signifies warning or victory. The next appointed time is the Day of Atonement, which happens on the 10th day of the seventh month. The central theme is the national atonement for sin of Yahweh's people and the land, to sanctify them before the holy God. The final feast is the Feast of Tabernacles, which is on the 15th day of the seventh month. The central theme is the dwelling in booths, the significance of which is Yahweh's own promise to tabernacle with his people. So these are Yahweh's appointed times which he has revealed to his people and commanded them to follow them as rehearsals towards a greater fulfillment. Apart from these specific appointed times, Yahweh also revealed the exact timeline in which he would carry out his plans. Accordingly, we read from the prophecy of Daniel the prophet in Daniel chapter 9. 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublesome times. And after the 62 sevens, the Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood, and till the end of the war, desolations are determined. So there are a collective set of things that were to be dealt once for all as per the purpose of Yahweh pertaining to his people. That is, to finish transgression of the people, put an end to sin, atone for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So, these collective things are the very central themes that Yahweh has revealed through his appointed times as to exactly when he has purposed to act. So, as per the time frame of Daniel's prophecy, we can calculate that from the going forth of the command to rebuild Jerusalem after Babylonian captivity by the Medo Persian Emperor Cyrus, it would take 7 sevens of years plus 62 sevens of years, which is 69 into 7, which is 483 years from this command to the arrival of the Messiah. We also saw in an earlier episode about the divinity of this Messiah. But after this time period, we are told that the Messiah would be cut off, but not for himself. We also see here that after the death of the Messiah, the rebuilt city and the sanctuary would be destroyed. So, if at all a divine Messiah is to come, he should have come within the period of the rebuilt temple and the rebuilt city, die a death not for himself, but in order to address these problems in hand for his people. Also, the prophecy of Haggai the prophet, when speaking about the rebuilt temple, is as follows: the glory of this latter house shall be greater than of the former, says Yahweh of hosts. And in this place will I give peace, says Yahweh of hosts. Just in case you don't know the difference between the first temple and the second temple, is that the Ark of the Covenant, which is housed in the Holy of Holies of the first temple by Solomon, was lost in the Babylonian captivity. The Ark of the Covenant was built under special revelation by Yahweh, which houses the Ten Commandment tablets, the jar of manna, and Aaron's staff, on whose top is the mercy seat. So the second temple was not that significant compared to the first on account of the absence of this Ark of the Covenant. Because during the Day of Atonement, the high priest we saw is to perform his ritual upon the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, without which the atonement could not be done. Yet we see here God's revelation about this latter house, which lacks the Ark of the Covenant, would still be greater in glory than the former temple. What is the reason? Malachi the prophet was given a divine revelation concerning this. Behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me. And the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight. Behold, he is coming, says Yahweh of hosts. So now we see the reason why the latter temple, in spite of lacking the Ark of the Covenant, will be considered greater in glory compared to the earlier temple because the Lord, who is also the messenger of the covenant, would suddenly come to his temple. By the way, who is the messenger of the covenant? Yes, it is Yahweh. Again, as per the law of slavery, as per Exodus 21 and Deuteronomy 15, we read, "Now these are the judgments which you shall set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he shall serve 6 years, and in the seventh he shall go out free and pay nothing." So again, as per the law of slavery, a Hebrew servant is to serve for 6 years, but in the seventh year he shall go free without any payment. If you can link this to the original problem with human fall in Genesis, Satan's dominion would be for 6 millennium of years or 6,000 years, as per the day for a year and the day for God being 1,000 years principle, which we have covered in an earlier episode. The seventh millennium is the prophesied sabbatical millennium of rest, which is promised in the scriptures by Yahweh, during which he would rule the earth as a king after the restoration of dominion back to man, after fulfilling the requirement of the law that is required for this restoration by becoming a man in order to be the ideal kinsman redeemer for mankind, and thus effect the promise of eternal life back to man by resurrecting his people who are saved by their faith in him. And this is the promise Yahweh has promised for his people. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of Yahweh, and their righteousness is from me, says Yahweh. This we read in Isaiah chapter 54, verses 17. Again, in Isaiah chapter 45, we read the following: "Tell and bring forth your case. Yes, let them take counsel together. Who has declared this from ancient time? Who has told it from that time? Have not I, Yahweh? And there is no other God besides me, a just God and a Savior. There is none besides me. Look to me and be saved, all you ends of the earth. For I am God and there is no other. I have sworn by myself. The word has gone out of my mouth in righteousness and shall not return, that to me every knee shall bow, every tongue shall take an oath. He shall say, Surely in Yahweh I have righteousness and strength. To him men shall come, and all shall be ashamed who are incensed against him. In Yahweh all the descendants of Israel shall be justified and shall glory." So, this concludes part 7 of the Messiah series. With these promises, prophecies, principles, and appointed times in mind, we will see in the next episode as to how and when did Yahweh fulfill all these things. Shalom.